I went to this Bohemian club and it's upset people. So I just wanted to hear from you and kind of take your temperature and see how you're feeling, see how you're doing, like what's going through your mind.
James, I mean, how did you even get invited there? And like, it's the most powerful secret society in the world.
Hi, my name is Justin Leslie, and I was a Pfizer whistleblower and was an inside agent for Project Veritas and O'Keefe Media Group, both started by James O'Keefe. When I started on this long journey several years ago, I had no idea what I was getting into, what I was going to uncover, and what I would come to find. As it turns out, what I found out turned my whole world completely upside down, and I'd like to share it with you. This is my story, Project Whistleblower.
My mother called me 2 days ago and said that her therapist's friend told her that her friend took a booster shot and died like the same day, I think, in her bathroom. I don't know if it was Pfizer, but like...
The only booster shot so far is in Pfizer.
So, I mean, well, it must have been Pfizer. And I'm just, like, concerned that, like, I mean, she was relatively old. She was 77, apparently. But, I mean, it's kind of scary to me.
Well, that's the thing. Just people die every day.
I think it's something that we should look into and make sure that the boosters are
looking into it.
Yeah.
It's just not our job to look into that.
Yeah.
But there are people within Pfizer, all the political people.
Okay.
And the safety people.
Right.
There are people who are not only looking at that, actually there are reports that come to Pfizer, zillions of them every day.
Zillions.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get started, let me give you a timeline of the last few years of my life. From August of 2020 to August of 2023, I went from college grad to master's student to Pfizer scientist to whistleblower to undercover investigative journalist working under one of America's most famous muckrakers, James O'Keefe, and finally to double agent. In the spring of 2020, I graduated college. That fall, I started my master's program at Rutgers. In March of 2021, I began working at the drug company Pfizer and continued working there till April of that next year. In May of 2022, I became a contract employee with the famously controversial Project Veritas as an undercover journalist. I left Project Veritas in March of 2023 when James O'Keefe left from the organization, and I joined his new enterprise, O'Keefe Media Group, or OMG. I finally resigned from that position in August of 2023, which leads me to here today and to the documentary that you are currently watching. Let's just say I had a crazy few years. And my whole journey started when the charade called COVID-19 made its debut in late 2019.
China has identified the cause of the mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
There are fears a rapidly spreading virus has reached Australia.
This is a rapidly emerging situation where there is not a cause for alarm.
The first U.S. case has been detected.
It was not botched. It was not bungled. It was not a blunder. It was not incompetence. It was not lack of knowledge. It was not spontaneous mass hysteria. This was calculated. This was formulated. This was focus grouped. This was articulated. This was manufactured. This was falsified. This was coerced. This was inflicted. This was denied.
Anybody who's lying here, Senator, it is you.
We were terrorized. We were isolated. We were gaslit.
You really need to get vaccinated.
We were dehumanized. We were wounded. We were killed. Don't let them get away with it. Don't let them get away with it. Don't let them get away with it.
I graduated from the University of Rhode Island in the spring of 2020 with a degree in pharmaceutical and biomedical sciences, right in the midst of the plandemic, or scamdemic as it came to be called. After not being able to secure employment after graduation, I decided to continue my education and was accepted into the Rutgers Master's Program of Biomedical Sciences. During that first semester, I started quickly waking up to the fact that the whole COVID narrative was absolute nonsense. I had just spent the last several years studying pharmaceuticals, and I was now waking up to the fact that the whole of the allopathic medical industry was top to bottom entirely corrupt. As a master's student, I even wrote a paper to my drug development professor, Dr. Welsh, titled COVID-19 Uncovered, outlining the dangers of the mRNA vaccines as well as detailing the lockstep agenda behind the whole thing. I listed a litany of issues with the whole COVID byline. For instance, number 1, that PCR, or the supposed testing that was used en masse to confirm if someone was sick with COVID, was nonsense and not even a test.
I mean, if you read the package insert on the Roche test, which is one of the biggest in the world, it says, quote, "This test is not to be used for diagnostic purposes." If this diagnostic test, according to the CDC, according to the FDA, cannot be used, and according to the inventor of the test, who said you cannot use this test for determining causation or diagnostic purposes, period.
What is it? What is it about humanity that wants to go to all the details and stuff and listen? You know, these guys like Fauci get up there and start talking. You know, he doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine, and he should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on at the bottom. You know, those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to, and they smugly, like Tony Fauci, does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera.
I also highlighted Minnesota Senator Dr. Scott Jensen's testimony that he was encouraged by the Department of Health to label deaths not proven to be COVID-related as COVID deaths.
Well, last Friday I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son, who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19.
I knew from basically the very beginning of the entire COVID-19 charade that the whole thing stunk to high hell. Knowing that I spent 4 years working towards something that I was starting to see as one big scam, I was pretty lost, to say the least. What was I supposed to do now? Lie to myself and start a career working for the very big pharma that brought us the scamdemic? Being in total limbo, I started applying for a handful of jobs with pharmaceutical companies in the Northeast. After just a few interviews, a recruiter from Mindlands Inc. reached out for a role with the drug company Pfizer. I applied to be a formulation analytical scientist for their pharmaceutical research and drug product design and development team in Andover, Massachusetts. The recruiter called back and said I have 24 hours to accept, and on the 23rd, I did. Essentially, I was a master's student at Rutgers who was looking for a job, and I started looking for a job while I was like waking up to the corruption inside Big Pharma all at once, realizing that these vaccines were actually death shots. When I talked to the recruiter, I basically was on my 23rd hour, and I basically said, okay, I'm gonna go to Andover, Massachusetts, and I'm gonna do something to make a difference in this world, and not stay on the sidelines, because who else was going to do it? Right before accepting the job offer, I sent an email to the undercover journalist team at Project Veritas. I am currently being offered a position with Pfizer as a formulation scientist in Andover, Massachusetts. I am intrigued with potentially using this as an opportunity to work together to potentially go undercover and become a whistleblower if/when I receive noteworthy information. Project Veritas got back to me that day saying, should you come across any information that you feel the public has a right to know, then feel free to contact us. At this point, the vaccine rollout was in full steam, and I took the job to go in and see for myself what was going on, and see it through an honest lens. While I was working at Pfizer, it was already being reported everywhere that these vaccines were causing all sorts of issues like myocarditis, blood clots, reproductive issues, and of course, death.
The CDC finding 16 to 24-year-olds who received the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine have experienced higher than normal cases of myocarditis and inflammation of the heart muscle.
The CDC says there could be a safety issue with Pfizer's updated COVID-19 vaccine. New numbers reveal a possible increase in a certain type of stroke in people 65 and older who recently received one of the updated boosters.
Even while I was working there, a massive list of adverse effects known to the company had been made public. The government was on schedule to start making these vaccines available to children within the next few months, and this to me was absolutely terrifying. During my time working at Pfizer, I started waking up to the fact that not only were the vaccines and COVID-19 a total scam, but that the entire subject of virology was one big pseudoscience.
There is no virus, so there's no scientific, rational reason to inject somebody with something to stop them from getting an illness where the cause of the illness is completely make-believe. The way I put this is, science, and particularly virology, I would say, is the art of confusing people. First of all, if you ask them, why can't you find it in your lungs, SARS-CoV-2? They say there's not enough to find, even though they say your lungs are teeming with viruses. The lungs are a perfect culture medium for this so-called virus. Why can't you find it in the lungs? It's just not enough to see. So what they do then is they take unpurified snot and they mix it with fetal bovine serum and antibiotics and take away the nutrients. They inoculate that on a culture. The culture breaks down, the cells break down, and by some Orwellian twist of language, they have the audacity to call that isolation of the virus, without actually doing a control experiment. And everything after that is dependent on this proof of the existence of a virus by an unscientific method.
Out of all the rabbit holes that the COVID agenda had sent me down, the biggest reveal for me was that viruses, as in all of them, have never been proven to exist. Christine Massey, an independent researcher in Canada, has proven that the isolation and purification of SARS-CoV-2 is nowhere to be found.
Hello and greetings from Canada. My name is Christine Massey and I'm here to share some important documents with you relating to virology and more generally germ theory. What I have on my website, if you click where you see COVID-19 FOI responses, and what these documents are is Freedom of Information responses to seek records that would be necessary in order for anyone to show the existence of the alleged COVID-19 virus. And if somebody actually wanted to conduct science and show that there's a virus that is infecting people, they would need to actually find it. And in order to sequence and characterize a particle and study it so that with controlled experiments, which is the foundation of scientific method, you would have to actually have a sample of this alleged virus to work with. And if nobody has a sample of the alleged virus, then nobody can have conducted any science. And so this is what the majority of these requests were focusing on. We were asking for any records of anyone in the world ever finding this alleged virus in the bodily fluid or tissue or excrement of any people anywhere on Earth by anyone ever. And to date, we have responses from 216 different institutions in 40 different countries. And so far, no one has been able to provide us with even one record. They can't provide us with even one record, and they can't cite any record. So they've all admitted that they don't have a sample of the alleged virus, and they don't even know of anyone else who ever did obtain a sample of this alleged virus.
Christine has done this with numerous other viruses, such as SARS, H5N1, H1N1, MERS, Ebola, and HIV. I became acquainted with many of the folks who worked on the End of COVID video series created by all-around badasses Alex Zek and DJ Mike Winter. The End of COVID series exhaustively debunks the pandemic paradigm surrounding virology, contagion, and more. The series highlights such doctors and researchers as Dr. Amanda Vollmer, Dr. Andy Kaufman, and Dr. Sam Bailey.
When we critique virology, we address their top-level journals, institutes, and virologists, and break down their various claims, sentence by sentence. We analyse every aspect of the literature, including isolation, electron microscopy, antibodies, PCR, genomics, human and animal studies, epidemiology, Fauci's emails, patents and grants involving, quote, coronaviruses, DARPA documents, and the ridiculous Project Veritas, quote, expose with the dropped term directed evolution. And none of it provides scientific evidence of viruses. Unfortunately, their fear-invoking claim that a pathogen could wipe out humanity is exactly the narrative that the establishment are pushing. The cabal and the medico-pharmaceutical industry are the beneficiaries when people believe in the concept of microbial contagion. Just as we have pointed out that the emperor has no clothes when it comes to viruses and pathogens, they are narratives to encourage entire populations to behave a certain way. The entire thing relied on the acceptance of virologist claims and their imaginary viruses. It was a fairy tale they taught us all at medical school. But when we researched the claim for ourselves, we discovered that none of their experiments supported the germ hypothesis. In fact, they refuted it.
What they have in reality in their test tubes, right? They have nothing.
How could a vaccine be made to cure a disease, which is caused by a virus that has never been isolated or even shown to exist? In short, it can't. It took me a while to fully wake up to this enormous lie, but awaken I did. After seeing a handful of undercover videos from the media group Project Veritas, then led by investigative journalist James O'Keefe, I was inspired to reach out to them and lend them my unique talent as a whistleblower.
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe.
James O'Keefe. Where's James?
As Ron Claiborne reports, the guerrilla journalist has already stirred up a lot of controversy in his still young career.
This was just the latest in a series of what's been called undercover guerrilla videos by the 26-year-old conservative activist, aimed at embarrassing or ensnaring what he considers liberal groups. The tools of his trade, a hidden camera, and actors, sometimes including himself, doing brazen impersonations. O'Keefe told George Stephanopoulos on Good Morning America that his goal was to expose scandal and hypocrisy.
I consider myself an investigative journalist. These are tactics journalists have been using for decades, going undercover, confronting subjects, posing as characters.
The video that initially inspired me was that of Jody O'Malley.
And she's a federal employee? Correct.
Jody was a registered nurse at the Department of Health and Human Services who recorded insiders claiming that
the government doesn't want to show that the darn vaccine is full of shit.
The darn vaccine is full of shit.
After seeing this, I was inspired again to reach out to Project Veritas, not a week later from this story's release.
FaceTime.
Hold on.
Hey, this is the Pfizer guy who recorded the Pfizer video. Hi, Jody.
Oh, well,
hello. But not for you. But not for you. This man never would have reached out to me. Yeah. So.
Project Veritas and leader James O'Keefe were known in the alternative media as real mavericks, and many saw O'Keefe's organization, Project Veritas, sparking a new era of guerrilla journalism.
The whole idea of the American experiment is the public's right to know, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're equal before the law, and that there should be no laws against the right of a reporter to publish information.
Hi, I'm James O'Keefe with Project Veritas. It isn't the politicians or the established press anymore, or the lobbyists or the pundits, but the people who have the power now. The power has shifted. The citizens have the power now. And the best part is, you know it. So the next time you try to take advantage of honest people, think twice, because the person sitting next to you may have a camera or a hidden microphone. If you are cheating, stealing, or scamming, you may become the next hapless internet sensation. Stay tuned.
Knowing I had so much to offer the public, being behind the scenes at one of the COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers, I reached out.
If you are part of one of these big pharma giants, we invite you to reach out to us at veritastips@protonmail.com. Be brave. Do something.
I sent them a picture and video of me holding the COVID vaccine in the subject line saying, "Pfizer Insider, I want to help." Within several days of me emailing them, I started working directly with the Project Veritas team and began wearing undercover recording equipment to work. So basically, they agreed to work with me in September and then gave me cameras in late September, early October, and then I started recording. I was 23 years old at the time. 23. I was naive, vulnerable, way too trusting, excited, and had absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. On Thursday, October 14th, 2021, I provided the Project Veritas team one Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, one vial of modified RNA flu vaccine, and one self-amplifying RNA vaccine, and the RNA for all three. We met in the parking lot of a Target in Wilmington, Massachusetts, down the road from the Andover campus. I was then instructed to follow the team to an apartment in Mamaroneck, New York, crossing state lines. In New York, we looked at these vials and their contents with a select group of people working with PV. In attendance That evening was quite a cast of characters. First up, we have Alicia Gamble, aka codename Nightingale. This song, The Demons. Alicia was an alleged nurse from Florida who now worked at PV. Alicia was a journalist assigned to work with me when I was a whistleblower at Pfizer. She has been shown previously to be an avid QAnon supporter, attending rallies and appearing in promotional videos about it.
Okay, everybody, say hello to Alicia Gamble. We've got her on today. She's coming out of Florida. Alicia, how's it going? And can you introduce a bit of about yourself to my audience?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Alicia. I like to organize our Great Awakening Q rallies. I organized the event in DC.
Nightingale is now employed by Steven Crowder and a journalist for Mug Club Undercover.
That your email's associated with this rapey website, and I'm just trying to figure out like what if this is bogus tip or.
Can I give you a call right back? Call you right back.
Okay.
Can I call you right back?
Yeah, sure.
Alicia's husband is Brian Gamble, someone who we will familiarize ourselves with just a little bit later in this film. Next up is Mike Spadone, or aka Jitsu. It was his job to have his hand in every single investigation that took place at PV. Jitsu now works at Louder with Crowder. Mike Villani, a senior producer at Project Veritas, was also there, who now works for Louder with Crowder. Lastly, we have Dr. Carrie Madej. Dr. Carrie was flown in by PV to be the doctor in charge of investigating what was in the vials. Madej became well known during the COVID-19 pandemic as a former osteopathic physician who openly opposed vaccines.
This vaccine is unlike any vaccine or medicine in the past that is being fast-tracked. We are skipping safety trials, we are skipping animal trials, and people need to know that this is not a safe vaccine. It has not been proven to be safe.
Dr. Carey had brought with her 2 vials of vaccines, being the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson shots. Along with the Pfizer shots that I provided, we had that evening in our possession the vaccines from 3 of the major vaccine producers at the time. 2 different microscopes were provided in the apartment, and Dr. Carey proceeded to place the Johnson & Johnson vials on the slide. Everyone there saw these black circles and what looked like parasites revolving around them as if they had a mind of their own. Next, we looked at Moderna and the Pfizer shots, and both had similar parasitic-like creatures in them, though they looked a little bit different from the Johnson & Johnson. Veritas insider Sundance had his blood drawn, and Dr. Carey put it on the slide with the Pfizer vaccine, and the blood cells coagulated immediately. Now, I am not claiming that I have any idea what was happening on the slide, as this was a phenomenon occurring outside the body, but it was absolutely nightmarish to witness. That evening, while all this was happening, I was continually checking into the Project Veritas Telegram channel, the JL or Justin Leslie info group, and everyone in there was telling me that I was an American hero. After this whole expose, I left New York around 4 a.m., driving 4 hours to go to work at Pfizer that morning. Project Veritas got rid of all the vials that I had provided them as to leave no trace. Several days later, on October 20th, 2021, Dr. Carrie Madej went on the Stu Peters show, sounding the alarm of what happened that Thursday prior.
We had Dr. Carrie Madej on this show several weeks ago. Last time she told us about the horrifying things that she saw when she put vials of the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 shots, vaccines, under the microscope. Now, she's giving us a first look at the Pfizer vials, and she wants to tell us the things that she has seen. Dr. Carrie Madej joins us now. You sent me some horrific slides and videos. I don't know what any of this is, so I'm going to rely on your expertise to tell us.
Thanks, Stu. Yeah, I'm happy to help. So I have worked with Project Veritas, an amazing team there, and they were able to work with a whistleblower from Pfizer, and through chain of custody, they brought forth some of the vials. So I have some of my own images, but Project Veritas will be, giving their story very soon, which will have so much detail, so much data. So please look for that. What I'm seeing in all of these manufacturers are synthetic substances. And then looking at the slides from Pfizer, we see the same kind of synthetic things in there. Also, something called, it looks similar to Teslaphoresis. That's when these little graphite-like black metallic particles start to coalesce into strings like a spider web. Anyhow, all these little particles will then coalesce and form their own neural network or their own fibers or wires.
So like they're building infrastructure.
Yeah, like you're taking Lincoln logs and putting them together and making your own new computer or your motherboard or your wires. You can see that happen in real time.
Initially, Dr. Madej was claiming the parasites might be Hydra vulgaris. I am not saying that I agree with Dr. Carey's conclusion. I do not know what I was looking at, but it was a nightmare. I was told by Project Veritas that this expose by Dr. Carey was going to be a preview as to what was to come. And what was to come?
Project Veritas will be, giving their story very soon, which will have so much detail, so much data. So please look for that.
This entire story was buried by Project Veritas. On October 21st, 2023, nearly 2 years to the day, I ended up calling Dr. Carey to ask for her perspective on what went down that night. Because, I still have, nightmares from that evening that we met. That whole experience, the way it went down.
God has been protecting you. You must know that, because of what they did, they put you out there. I know you still work with them, but you were fed to the wolves, and God protected you.
Yeah,
I hope you know that.
I went to go work at Project Veritas, and you saw what happened ultimately.
That's what I'm saying. They anybody that's higher up, that was not right what they did to you.
Right.
And I say that over and over, just wanting to make sure that don't trust the same people again. That's all.
Absolutely. Ultimately, I'm curious if, I'll be honest with you in the sense that I don't, necessarily trust James. I've been looking at him through a certain lens, right?
I wouldn't trust him either.
Yeah, so you don't ultimately, and
No.
On November 4th and November 6th, Eric Cochran, Spencer Meads, and CEO James O'Keefe were raided by the FBI.
In November 2021, the FBI conducted pre-dawn raids upon myself and my journalistic colleagues, Spencer Meads and Eric Cochran, seizing cell phones, journalistic notes, and other devices. This was all purported to be over an investigation that we were doing into the Ashley Biden diary, a story that we ended up never publishing.
I'm sorry, so what is this regarding? This is the search warrant.
Tonight, a major developing story after the FBI raided the home of Project Veritas CEO and founder James O'Keefe, along with other Project Veritas journalists, as part of an investigation into a diary believed to have been written by Joe Biden's daughter, Ashley.
Federal prosecutors from the Department of Justice in the Southern District of New York and the FBI appear to have targeted Project Veritas because of our investigative journalism. In 2020, we lawfully received material from sources concerning Ashley Biden's diary and what it said about her father, then presidential candidate Joe Biden. We ultimately decided not to publish the story and worked with local law enforcement to return these materials to her.
At the time, this struck me as so odd. The whole thing was just far too coincidental. How strange was it that this FBI raid happened right after the Microscope Expose and while I was still recording inside Pfizer. The whole thing felt like a charade playing out in real time. Days after this raid, CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla, bragged about how the big pharma company was in communication with the CIA and FBI.
There was, particularly with us, we were targeted by a lot of, let's say, dark organizations that you don't really know the ownership. You suspect that there are some countries behind. We were getting a lot of briefings from CIA, from FBI about attacks that may happen to us, cyber attacks, I mean, but also about the spread of misinformation.
FOIA requests proved that Pfizer was indeed working with the FBI investigating Project Veritas.
Now, in this document, which is an FBI document dated January 6, 2022, it's in response to a FOIA request. All communications regarding Project Veritas between FBI officials and employees / representatives of Pfizer. That's right, Pfizer Pharmaceutical.
What was the FBI doing working in conjunction and directly with a pharmaceutical company in the first place? And why in the hell were they specifically investigating PV? Dr. Carrie Madej admits on the Stu Peters show that Project Veritas is working with the Pfizer whistleblower.
I have worked with Project Veritas, an amazing team there, and they were able to work with a whistleblower from Pfizer. And
I'm still working at Pfizer. And then the FBI raid on the PV journalist happens. At the time, I was in the middle of this entire thing, and I was freaking out. On December 3rd, 2021, at the Capitol Grill in Hartford, Connecticut, I met James O'Keefe for the first time. The dinner was attended by security, Jitsu, and Nightingale. At our meeting, James explained to me that my whistleblower story could not be told because I broke recording consent statutes in the state of Massachusetts. As naive as it sounds, at the time I was completely oblivious to recording statutes. I had no idea. James also informed me that the vials that I had provided to PV team members when they crossed state lines supposedly had broken some other state law. None of it made any sense. I was recording inside Pfizer every day. I was getting meetings with directors and executives. I was getting absolutely bombshell stuff and had uncovered Willy Wonka's golden ticket of whistleblower stories. If Project Veritas knew that the recordings I was getting inside Pfizer could never be released because of state recording laws, then why did they give me the recording equipment in the first place? The second rule at Project Veritas is do not break the law, and yet they knew the laws that would be broken by recording. Why did they string me along for 2.5 months? Brandon Monroe, aka Security, echoed my sentiment.
Yeah, I know, I get it.
And hindsight's 2020, and the lawyers never gave us input on that, which is why we did it. But in hindsight, what we should have done is we should have had you drive it across state lines, since you were the whistleblower. But because we did it, it was illegal. But you know, there's a lot going on with that, and you know, the thing that sucks is that the lawyers were kind of blaming us, even though the entire 3-month long investigation of that, they knew every step of the plan. Like, they knew all of it. So it was kind of shitty on the lawyers' part, in my opinion. But.
Right.
At the time, I was completely distraught, and I pleaded with James to release the footage regardless, because at this point, I was desperate to help reveal the truth. James tried to use the FBI raid as a warning and massive excuse not to move forward with the story. Isn't Project Veritas' motto, be brave, do something? Well, I was being brave and doing something. James tried to talk me down from the whole thing, supposedly trying to reason with me.
I pointed out that the brave journalist, and many of you know who this person is, I'm not going to name anyone, who recorded the interaction was someone that I had to sit down over a year prior Remember? Over dinner? For hours. Talking off the proverbial ledge. Insisting he take the long, arduous road to get the story about Pfizer. And indeed he did.
So, what the heck happened to you? Dr. Carrie Madej went on Stu Peters' show with a whistleblower from Pfizer, being me, who was working with Project Veritas, where there was going to be a huge expose that came out. But it turns out James O'Keefe thought it was a terrible idea to let me blow the whistle on everything and decided to spike my story. What I wanted to do at Project Veritas is go investigate and go try and make a difference with the blood clot stories that were going on and try and relate it to the vaccine that way, which we did. And then the journalist team that I was working with said that they were operating under legal advice from their lawyers. Lawyers and James were ultimately what spiked this story. What I had uncovered at Pfizer, the public had a right to know. Period. James didn't talk me down for hours. He was at dinner for probably 40 minutes, had a bowl of soup, and left. Before he left that night, he went on to offer me employment at Project Veritas as an undercover journalist, which actually breached part of our contributor contract agreement. I went home that day in tears, having the evidence of a crime against humanity resting on my shoulders and knowing that the story was going to be buried was absolutely heart-wrenching. But there was nothing that I could do about it. The story was now in the hands of James and PV, and I was left out to dry. I ended up staying at Pfizer for another 4 months and ended up going to work for PV as a UCJ. Why did I take the job after James spiked my story? Because I wanted to get my Pfizer story back.
And indeed he did.
I started working contractually with Project Veritas in late May of 2022, and it took me about 6 or 7 months to fully learn undercover investigative journalism. My code name was BAM, which had a plethora of meanings, but mainly came from the Bible verse 1 Corinthians 9:22, as an acronym of by all means. The first undercover investigation that I was part of was entitled Funeral Fun, and was with a seasoned undercover journalist, or UCJ, Crow, whose real name is Adam Sharp. We attended a conference in Tennessee with embalmers, morticians, and funeral directors. We were trying to elicit these professionals on the blood clot samples that had been sent to us at PV. More on that later. I got some interesting sound bites, but nothing that PV thought was worth releasing. One of my next assignments for PV was to infiltrate and investigate a free professional development program for teachers called EdCamp Long Island.
During Project Veritas' 5-month undercover investigation into EdCamp, culminating in the LGBT Teach session earlier this month, Long Island, New York emerged as an epicenter for using the classroom to promote gender ideology to children.
I went as alias David Deft, a bisexual master's student from New York's Fordham University. My first session of the day was led by social worker and Spanish teacher Elisa Waters, called Pronouns, Flags, and Bathrooms. The footage you are seeing here was all caught by me.
I'm Alyssa Waters. I'm a middle school teacher at Jericho Middle School. I teach Spanish and social justice. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I particularly love working with families and helping them, practicing, affirmation through their children's journeys of sexuality and gender. And the truth is that we know that kids are coming out at younger and younger ages, and gender is, sexuality as well. But especially looking at gender, we have kids as early as 2-3 years of age.
I actually met my next subject, David Casamento, during Alyssa Waters' session at EdCamp. David was an assistant superintendent of the East Meadow Union Free School District in New York and an openly gay man for 30 years.
A Project Veritas journalist met David Casamento, an assistant superintendent for the East Meadow School District on Long Island, New York, at an educator seminar hosted by EdCamp LI. Project Veritas met with Dr. Casamento as well as numerous educators and presenters from EdCamp to gain a better understanding of what is being taught in schools across Long Island and the United States as a whole as part of EdCamp.
Sexual identity was always part of my work because I believe in making connections with kids.
It's always part of my work because I believe in making connections with kids.
Do you encourage your teachers to write like a curriculum advanced in diversity, equity, inclusion work?
Yes, covertly. Every district is doing this covertly.
Every district is
except
doing
for the
covertly.
Black population.
During this session, Dave fully admits that if people knew what he was doing, it would be political suicide.
See the civilization of the United States going, it's worrying on many levels to me. I actually thought of running a session, but then there's this political side that someone could be recording inside the room. And politically, that could be suicide.
Shortly after this video was released, Dave Casamento had been administratively reassigned.
New tonight, the assistant East Meadow superintendent accused of making some controversial claims has been reassigned. You're looking at video of parents calling for his resignation at a very heated board meeting on Wednesday. The school district board president now tells News 12 Dave Casamento will not be working in any district buildings and that an investigation is underway.
When these stories were released by PV, the parents in the county were furious and were absolutely appalled at what these teachers were doing.
And I actually want to thank Project Veritas for exposing this corruption of our kids throughout different school districts and encouraging parents to speak up in order to protect their kids. There is nothing wrong with that.
My sexual identity was always part of my work because I believe in making connections with kids. Now, what is that all about?
These are your schools!
Superintendent Card, will Dr. Casamento resign? Dr. Card, any comment? This is a very big deal, you can tell.
These are your schools! These are your schools!
All of this undercover work ultimately led me to the biggest story ever unveiled by Project Veritas and James O'Keefe. The story of Jordan, Tristan, and Walker. One of the principal ways that PV would honeypot is by going on dates with subjects. This is a tactic that James still uses today.
Our investigative journalism uses hidden cameras to expose what powerful people want kept hidden for the wrong reasons. One of the most effective ways to get access to those people, to get meetings, to get in front of them, is to swipe right on dating apps. Subjects are more relaxed, open, and forthcoming than they would ever be in a formal interview. In fact, some of our biggest, most impactful, hard-hitting video journalism has come from undercover reporters meeting with subjects this way. If we publish your story, we'll feature your journalism and we'll even pay you for it.
We're exploring, like, now, you know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves?
I knew, being a handsome young guy, I figured this angle was my best shot. I was so dedicated to exposing the corruption that I even went so far as to pierce my ears to look more effeminate. Going on queer dates with gay men was embarrassing and absolutely demoralizing. But at this point, I felt that I needed to do whatever it took to catch the bad guys, if you will. And this is how I secured my next subject. I contacted Jordan on the dating app Bumble.com and honed in on him as he was the Director of Research and Development, Strategic Operations of mRNA Scientific Planning at Pfizer. Jordan worked in New York City and had no direct connection to my former position in Andover, Massachusetts. I ended up going on 3 undercover gay dates with him, where at dinner one evening, he openly discussed that Pfizer is ultimately thinking about mutating COVID.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about mutating COVID?
Well, that is not what we say to the public. No, don't tell anyone this. You gotta publish, don't tell anyone. You gotta publish, don't tell anyone. Yeah, we're exploring, like, no, you know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we can create unfairly develop new vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're gonna do that, though, there's a risk of, like, as you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses. Be, like, very controlled to make sure that this virus that you mutate doesn't create something like, you know, it goes everywhere.
Something crazy.
I suspect is the way that the virus started in Wuhan. To be honest, like, it makes no sense that this virus popped out of nowhere. Like,
yeah, I know.
Jordan also spilled the beans that evening about how the Pfizer executives and the FDA were essentially in bed with one another. He also discussed that the Pfizer vaccine was potentially causing fertility issues in women.
Well, meantime, there are new concerns over COVID vaccines and a possible impact on reproductive health. A global study confirms a link between the vaccines and a temporary increase in menstrual cycle length, but researchers still aren't sure why. And it comes as new undercover video is making the rounds on social media from conservative watchdog group Project Veritas, claiming to show an alleged Pfizer executive admitting the company's COVID vaccine could have an effect on women's reproductive health.
so there hasn't been, like, any problems so far. We'll see. Like, in the next couple of years, if anything comes up, I'm hoping it won't, obviously.
Hope nobody's growing 3 legs or something like that, right?
My undercover footage of Jordan Walker went viral, accumulating 50 million views on Twitter.
Pfizer now addressing concerns after damaging research claims in an undercover video. This has come after Project Veritas released 2
video making the rounds on social media, calling into question the power of big pharma.
This has been covered a lot over the past several days. There was like some Project Veritas drama.
Really amazing series of videos from Project Veritas showing a Pfizer executive admitting the company is engaged in something called directed evolution.
Pfizer released a statement that says, in part, in the ongoing development of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID vaccine, Pfizer has not conducted gain-of-function or directed evolution research.
Just this last week, we saw that YouTube and Facebook have censored Project Veritas in some of the most important investigative research that we've seen come out of a media company.
They basically scrubbed this guy from the internet as soon as Project Veritas released this video.
It was a massive story and a home run for the Project Veritas team, giving them a huge boost in their credibility.
But the fact that Pfizer disabled their comments, RC, that's a reaction. Pfizer hasn't responded officially, but they're disabling their comments. Damage control. That is a reaction. We're getting a reaction from Pfizer.
So, YouTube just took down our Pfizer expose. It had 800,000 views. YouTube gave us a strike and will not let us post for a week.
At this point, I knew virology was a lie. I knew that there was no virus. And it became clear to me that the only reason that this footage and story was released by Project Veritas and as well promoted by the mainstream media is because this video revealed absolutely nothing. What did this expose expose? The Jordan Walker story only asserted that not only was the virus real, but as well that it could be morphed and mutated into something more deadly. All it did was add fuel to the fire to the gain-of-function narrative that was being touted at the time. Dr. Robert Malone was highlighted in the original PV release, pushing the pseudoscience that I knew was bullshit.
We talked to Dr. Robert Malone, physician, scientist, and author, to get his take on the comments made by Jordan Walker.
You're gaining function, you're creating a new function in virus 1 by adding elements from virus 2, infecting one monkey and then another monkey. That's called serial passage. That appears to have been one of the technologies deployed in the Wuhan Institute of Virology with the humanized mouse strains that I believe were obtained from EcoHealth Alliance. That's an example of directed evolution.
I remember after the release of this story, James told me that the world was my oyster and that we could make money off this content and get 100,000 subscribers. That was his concern at this point, that we could make money from this, and not the fact that the drug company Pfizer was helping commit genocide on the good people of this world. As it turns out, it was all a smokescreen, and I was the smoke.
I mean, the world is your oyster. If you launched a subscription-like thing, I know that's not possible. But if you launched that tomorrow, you'd get 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah,
so.
easy.
What did you do with that Pfizer investigation? And again, this kind of has your signature all over it. I mean, it's a bold, strong move, right? That takes, you know, some, what do you call it? Testicular fortitude, right?
Yes, testicular fortitude.
Talk about what you did and what you need, maybe the ethos you need to have in your organization to do what you did.
Well, Jordan, Walker was a Pfizer executive and a brave young man came to me some time ago, a year or two ago, and wanted to do something. He's the one who recorded Walker. Brave, very proud of him and how far he's come. Doing this sort of work is not easy.
I asked Robert, how can this be that there wasn't a whistleblower, that this had to come out in your video? How come it wasn't a whistleblower?
Well, this is James. Thanks. I think you're dead on point. Is that the dam breaks eventually in media, and the information dam has to break. And this is also some information. The person that recorded this worked for Pfizer. The man, the person who recorded this, came from Pfizer. So in some regards, that there have been whistleblowers, just ones you don't know about, that have been steadily investigating and reporting on this for well over a year.
He's like, yeah, like in the real Pfizer whistleblower, like you said. I'm like, how are you gonna come at me?
You're a pretty strong guy, man. I have to give you credit. You're stronger than me. I don't know how you deal with it psychologically.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? It was just around the time of the Jordan Walker piece that something turned in me. Everything I was involved in started to seem like theater, like a play, like one giant show. I began to question the Veritas of the people I worked with and the people I worked for. As it turned out, my newfound career as an undercover journalist would lead me to investigate a new story. And that was James O'Keefe himself. Somehow, I had gone from college grad to master's student to Pfizer scientist to whistleblower to undercover journalist. Now, I had a new role to take on, and that was double agent, or an insider to the insiders. It was ballsy, risky, sometimes downright stupid, and even possibly dangerous. But I honestly didn't care. I smelled a rat. And I wanted to smoke that rat out of his hole. By all means.
And now, on with the show.
The mission is to discover people who actually have principles that are not for sale, who will do the right thing rather than talk about it. I'm sick and tired of people talking about it. I'm tired of seeing tens of thousands of people slide into my DMs and then complaining about how bad things are, and then they do nothing. I'm just tired of it. So, Here I stand, I can do no other. If they're going to kill me, they're going to kill me.
After the Project Veritas directed evolution Pfizer story hit, a source provided blood specimen samples and sent them to Veritas tips at protonmail.com. I took screenshots of these, which I kept, and I made sure to leave the source anonymous. This is a photo of a normal, unvaccinated blood sample, and this is a photo of vaccinated blood. As you can see, the vaccinated samples are forming granulations. Even to the untrained eye, something is clearly wrong here. Project Veritas never brought these blood samples to the attention of the public. In my view, this was so fucked up, and I couldn't even believe it was real. These are the blood clot samples that were sent to Project Veritas used in the funeral fund investigation. The embalmer who sent these said he had never seen anything like this in the 10 plus years that he worked.
I'm delighted to welcome Mr. John O'Looney the funeral director from Milton Keynes Family Funeral Services Limited. Now, we started talking because we've got a mutual concern about these white fibrous clots that are coming out of the circulatory system of many deceased individuals. So these white clots, just to be clear, the first time you can remember seeing them was 2021, not 2020, and never before that.
No, and I've got so in the 18 years that I've been a funeral director, 7 of those years were spent working for the coroner. So my job was body recovery, and I would recover people in all different various states. And whilst I wouldn't know the Latin term for every ligament and nerve, I could tell you what's normal and what isn't normal. And I've got a BIE registered embalmer who works for me full time, who's done 22 years, and he's never seen them before 2021. No.
Mm-hmm. So some people think they've seen some small ones in 2020, but that's not your experience. It's 2021 they started, midway through 2021.
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
and that just happens to correlate with being 6 months after the onset of the some therapeutic intervention or other.
100%. Yeah, that I can tell you. I definitely believe that's what's causing this.
It was not long after I started working at Pfizer that it was being claimed in alternative media outlets that the compound Luciferase was being used in the production of the vaccines.
The next part of the delivery system is a luciferase enzyme. Okay, they named it, they patented it Luciferase. Luciferase because it has bioluminescent qualities, which means it can produce a light or it has a light source.
Luciferase is a fluorescent enzyme found in jellyfish and fireflies that produces bioluminescence. This enzyme was supposed to only be used in animal studies for the research of the detection of lipid nanoparticles, or LNPs.
Listen, guys, now I'm really worried. This is where I got the shot, the second shot. Look at this. It's glowing.
Was this from the vaccine? Who can be sure? What I can absolutely affirm to you is that the vials I worked with indeed glowed, and you can kind of see it here.
Hi everybody, my name is Melissa McAtee, also known as Melissa Strickler, the Pfizer whistleblower from Project Veritas. I worked at Pfizer for almost 10 years, 5 years as a quality auditor. Here is my driver's license before I got married and changed my last name. Here is my work badge with my pre-marriage name. Here is the backside to show that it is Pfizer property and my CDA sticker, which proves that I can deal with controlled drugs. Here's an extremely embarrassing photo of me at work wearing that badge. Here is a product that has the same exact lid color, vial size, and is liquid. It is on the exact same light test table that I always light tested at as a quality auditor. Normal looking solution. Almost all product looks like this. And here is the hokey pokey that they are mandating to people. Notice anything funny about that solution? It's glowing. If you ignore the reflection of my glove here, you can see that this solution is almost totally clear with a very slight tint of yellow on the white side. Here's another one. And here's a really clear image to show you how clear it is. But oop, it goes over to the black side. Same table, same light, same surroundings, same vial. And it changes when it goes in front of the black background. It's glowing.
What kind of a chemical could glow? What could make the product glow?
Just from my, research and stuff, I've found that luciferase and graphene oxide can emit glowing.
The other big thing I discovered was with the LMPs. LMPs are supposed to open up and release the RNA, but we're going into the heart, reproductive organs, and other parts of the body. The only problem is that's not supposed to happen. This was recognized and duly recorded by Pfizer themselves. I downloaded 400 pages of documents proving it. I am now only in possession of 2 pages concerning the LMPs, which showed the pharmacokinetic data of the biodistribution of where the LMPs were going. I brought this issue up to a director at Pfizer, Ramin Davari, and he instructed me that the documents and data were confidential and that I was not allowed to show anyone. The remaining 400 pages were left in the hands of the team at Project Veritas. There's a 9 terabyte file of evidence that Veritas is sitting on from all the recording that I was doing. During my time inside Pfizer, I obtained a ridiculous amount of footage, and being completely naive, gave all of it over to Project Veritas. Part of the footage that I obtained was from a meeting with Vice President of Biotherapeutics and Pharmaceutical Sciences, Nick Warren. The meeting was called FDA Advisory Committee for Pfizer's COVID vaccines for kids ages 5 to 11. In it, Nick Warren goes on to explain how the buffer system had a minor change during the approval process. Changing this could absolutely affect the stability and storage life of the vaccines.
Thank you, Dr. Gruber. My name is Nick Warren, and I'm in Biotherapeutics Pharmaceutical Sciences. We explored a number of alternate buffer systems to enhance the stability of the RNA LNP product, as well as to allow for lower concentrations to be made available. We have performed an extensive comparability evaluation comparing the 2 formulations and have found them to be biochemically and pharmaceutically comparable. The only change is in the formulation, which is the last step of the product manufacture.
I brought all of this up to Nick Warren in detailed notes when I had my meeting with him the first week of November. Within the first 5 minutes, he said that he had gamed the FDA through lying by omission and by not discussing the clinical data related to this new formulation. I actually had 2 meetings with Nick Warren. In the second meeting, after he admitted that Pfizer had gamed the FDA, I went in with a copious amount of notes ready to drill him on this point. Even writing in the margins the questions, how else can we game the FDA? And don't we tell them what to do? This was Bombshell. It was criminal. It was dangerous and insane. Something like this had to be released to the public. They had a right to know, and they had the right to know right now. To top it off, in early 2023, Steve Kirsch, entrepreneur, philanthropist, environmentalist, and founder of the COVID-19 Early Treatment Fund, wrote an article ripping Reuters for fact-checking a claim about a Pfizer whistleblower having provided vials of the vaccine through chain of custody to Dr. Carey Madej. Who was the fact-checker of this story but Nick Warren himself? With the goal of recovering my original Pfizer story, I started inquiring the team members of PV as to what happened to the footage. The footage was originally on a server at Project Veritas and had been wiped off the server by leadership. On March 14th, I went to a bar down the road from PVHQ with senior producer Mike Villani and Jazz, real name Michael Juarez, who was the insider department head at PV.
Did you guys see the content of, like, with the FDA guy? It was Nick Warren, the vice president, right? Where, like, he says, he gamed the system, right? Like, gamed the FDA, basically, like, lied by omission, right? That's what he said. And, dude, imagine if my insider story was released.
Villani was the one who cut down all the chain of custody footage with Madej. He saw everything. Here, Villani admits that the footage is secure on a hard drive.
Dude, of the chain of custody, right?
I actually, dude, you know how annoying it is?
Dude, can I ever see that one day?
It's in, so I had to take it off the server.
It's off the server?
But it's on a drive.
It's on a drive?
So, Villani, quick question. You know how you said that you have that 9-hour footage of, like, when I was an insider? I was curious if you could make a duplicate of that for me and give it to me.
Yeah, so I don't have it right now. Like, I mean, obviously not right now, I'm at a bar, but like even at the office, I don't have it because after like your story, we were like concerned, so we backed it up on a drive that I don't have. And I don't even think anyone at the office has it, but that's where it lives, and like there's not a copy on the server or nothing.
Okay. Do you know who has the copy?
It might be our outside counsel, John Lickman. Why do you want just like?
I've never seen it. I've always wanted
I know.
to see
I want
it.
to show you. I just want to like watch it with you because it's fucking awesome.
And then I have to type this up really quick. We also have Nick Warren, VP of R&D at Pfizer, saying that they gave the system to the FDA. He admits they used a different formula in the children's vaccine that was the formula they did research and studies on, right?
Yes. The next clip you'll hear is from the resignation call I made to the Project Veritas COO, Daniel Robert Strack. I asked him where the hard drive and the terabytes worth of documents and footage went.
Bam.
Hey Dan, how's it going?
Good, how are you? What's going on?
I have one quick question for you. I had a conversation with Villani. Obviously, you know, I know the whole situation with when I was a source insider.
Yeah.
The information that I obtained, it was moved off the server. I was just curious where it actually is now.
With legal.
It's with legal? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Is it with outside counsel or inside counsel?
Outside, why?
Oh, I'm just curious. All right. Well.
All good? Everything else good?
Yeah.
All right.
And I would, you know, it's obviously tough to say this, but I wanted to let you know that I'm resigning.
You are.
Yeah, unfortunately. I also have the recording of me speaking with Nathaniel, aka Carrot Top, an intern at PV, who eventually went to OMG and was James's right-hand man, who said that Hannah Giles was told to leave the Massachusetts footage alone.
And then she said, she also talked about your footage in Massachusetts.
And James said this. She also brought up Bam's footage and masks. I told her to leave it alone. She said she's being asked about it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
James, you were saying Massachusetts. I still want to get that content again.
I know. I want to publish the content. I just don't want us to go to jail.
But lying to the FDA.
Oh, of just like how this, the story of how your content never made it out when it should have.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sucks. I mean, I don't know. I was just acting in like good faith. I didn't even know I was breaking any laws. I was just like,
I know. Don't beat yourself up. I know, but listen, you have to understand the content is dated.
I know. I saw. And what happens if that I don't know. Like, if this, I don't know. It's the longer you sit on this, the longer it looks bad.
Agreed. And that's why it'll probably never see the light of day as far as the legal opinion. They said like this, not to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And look, they're involved with remember the Albert Bourla video not that long ago of them working with the FBI to stop the spread of misinformation. I mean, they're literally just waiting for us to fuck up. Waiting for it. And we would hand it to them on a fucking platter. And I hate to say it. And that's what I said on the call. I was like, I fucking hate to say this, but the content is strong. But I believe the risk is higher now. I really do. And it took hearing the lawyer's comments to like really drill that home, because he's like, no, you just pissed off the bear. Like, they are waiting for this. They're waiting for something that they can cling to. And especially you work here, now that's like, they would love to destroy you and be like, oh, look, so not only did they do that, they, hired him, and then he went and got this other Pfizer story, and like, this is the guy.
Well,
they would make an example out of you.
I'm just saying, like, who would we give this to that isn't like corrupt, that would just be able to...
Nobody's to be trusted with this besides us. There's nobody. Anybody that, if this goes out, you're compromised. And not just, like, if we got something again legally, it'd be completely different if we're willing to burn you. But it's not just burning you. You'll be burned and then tracked down and then deposed, and we'll all be deposed, and then the truth will come out. One ugly way, potentially destroying, all of our, you're in jail, a couple other people in jail. I don't know what to say about it.
No, the way I look at it is I'm like a whistleblower standpoint, like.
Are you suggesting you're gonna blow the whistle on us?
No, I'm saying, like, I was trying to blow the whistle on Pfizer and then I couldn't.
I know. And you're the most ballsy bro there ever was. And that's why I even told them on the call, I was like, guys, Bam's brave. Like, I know you guys are, I'm just letting you know, if Bam were on the call, he wouldn't be tolerating this part of the conversation well. Because I was like, Bam's brave. That's not, he would sacrifice himself for this. Okay. But that's when we were all like, yeah, but it's like, we don't want that for you. And we also want to continue operating.
I spoke with insider agent at PV and OMG, Jasper, who admitted that the footage is still out there and probably in the hands of PV board member Matt Tiermont.
Just remember, because I care about you and because I care that this could create more danger for you, because the Massachusetts tapes are still out there.
The Massachusetts what?
The microscope tapes. So
Where are they?
Well, obviously, only, Lord God willing, only PV has them, but there's a big chance Matt Tierman does too.
Interesting.
Matt is a very well-connected fellow, with all sorts of ties in Washington and other places, let's just say. On the 23rd of March, I overheard James and Nightingale talking about the terabyte of data, and quickly whipped out my phone and grabbed a recording of the conversation. You can hear Nightingale mention that me even asking about it was suspicious.
So what did Scott want? I don't want to scare you. He's just...
Scott is just wild.
He's paranoid.
A terabyte
Like,
of data and he wanted it.
pop your trunk. You're
Because you asked about your content.
Pop your trunk. Yeah.
They thought was suspicious.
Further confirmation that these files were on the server and removed was recorded in the Connecticut Sentinel. The newspaper stated that they had been provided communications between former Project Veritas head James O'Keefe and a PV board member from PV-owned devices and servers. In the exchange, an undisclosed person asks if there was anything important in the M or Microscope Expose. James O'Keefe is recorded saying, "This is a cut-down version of the most newsworthy content." This most newsworthy content is on a hard drive and in the possession of PV legal counsel, and that is where it will stay until PV and their lawyers decide to do the right thing and allow the public to see what I witnessed and recorded. Unfortunately, until then, we can file this under the category of the things you never saw.
Project Veritas will never shy away from exposing the truth to the American public. Our job is never done. Stay tuned.
In February of 2023, the board of directors at PV, mainly Matt Tiermond and Joe Barton, signed a letter calling James out for such things as, I quote, becoming a power-drunk tyrant who pontificates on who we should be exposing.
We, the staff at Project Veritas, are at a crossroads. High-level disputes between our leader and founder, James O'Keefe, and the volunteer board of directors who are responsible for oversight of the nonprofit have resulted in James no longer being here. James is not only the founder of Project Veritas, but the creative visionary of our mission. This devastated us and the audience we exist for. James hasn't resigned, nor was he fired. These events confuse and they hurt us, leaving all of us in a state of limbo.
On Sunday, February 5th, a board member requested my presence at his home. He informed me, quote, "You had nothing to do, James, with this Pfizer story," unquote. Perplexed by this, I took out my iPad and showed him a video of myself confronting the Pfizer executive, which had 11 million views on YouTube. He responded, quote, "But that was after the undercover video had already been done," unquote. I pointed out that the brave journalist, and many of you know who this person is, I'm not going to name anyone, who recorded the interaction was someone that I had to sit down over a year prior, remember, over dinner, for hours, talking off the proverbial ledge, insisting he take the long, arduous road to get the story about Pfizer, and indeed he did.
With the company falling apart, I knew that I was going to need to leave Project Veritas, as it was obvious that James was on his way out and I knew my story wasn't finished. I was offered a role in James's new journalistic firm, the O'Keefe Media Group. It was sort of a gun-to-my-head situation. I either took the job or I was basically out. I decided I needed to continue to have access to James, and my story wasn't finished. so I followed him to OMG.
And that person now works for me, by the way, at OMG. He's the one who recorded Walker. Brave, very proud of him and how far he's come. Doing this sort of work is not easy.
I hope you all appreciate this. 100 days ago, James O'Keefe was experiencing board fights and all that. Everyone knows the story. It's all out there. 100 days later, James O'Keefe is laying shots on target against a $10 trillion company. That's unbelievable. To be able to get the reporters, to get the story out there, I mean, this guy is a magician.
I have been defamed, arrested, raided, and ultimately removed from the organization I spent so much time developing credibility of. We are going to build an army of investigators and exposers. They have awakened a sleeping giant. I'm back. Remaining by my side are a small, tight-knit group of the most elite journalists in the world. Exposing corruption requires standing up to power because power hates sunlight. We are sunlight. Welcome to the O'Keefe Media Group, where we will never be shut down because not only do I own it, but you own it too. Support us and sponsor our army of journalists by becoming a founding member today.
This video here is from October 6th, 2021. I had a meeting with my manager, Conwall Gill, a principal scientist working on the vaccine formulation at Pfizer. In this meeting, I asked her if it was okay to give people another experimental injection regarding the booster shots, or if it was a drive for money. So, are we...
But we are still...
do we know that, just thinking, ethically, is it okay to, give people another experimental injection? Are we sure it's going to be safe and effective? Or are we just rolling these out because we want to roll them out for money?
Yeah. This is a real-time data that we are generating. We don't even know. When we started vaccinating people, we had no idea how it's going to look like. Yeah. mRNA vaccines have been there for 50 years, but nothing made to clinical. Why? Because mRNA vaccines have been known to have side effects.
Right. But
Moderna has been working on it for 10 years. This is not the new thing, right? But why it did not reach trial was because of all these side effects. We, Pfizer and Moderna, used the emergency and the pandemic to kind of get through it now. Okay. But, we didn't, but even CDC noted we don't have data. So
it could never get FDA approved until we had this emergency, right? We had to try something new. So, but why didn't we try a vaccine formulation that has been effective in the past, with egg yolk or something that they use with flu, right? I don't know.
Yeah, so we here did not do it because we already have collaboration with BioNTech on flu before actually COVID happened. So mRNA, so what the story behind we starting on this, because BioNTech guy, Sahim, the BioNTech CEO, he called Catherine Jensen.
Sahim?
Yeah, he called Catherine Jensen and he's like, hey, I have this technology, but I don't have resources to make it big. So Catherine was like, well, we had a collaboration in place before for flu. So we wanted to give it a shot. It is a new mRNA thing. Nobody knew anything about it. We never had this. Everything is just fresh from last year.
Learning on the fly.
So it was on a fly. Pandemic, just roll it out. There was no time to think. It was a time to act.
Who Conwall was mentioning in this clip is Catherine Jensen, the former head of vaccine research and development at Pfizer.
I'm Catherine Jensen. I develop vaccines which help millions of people around the world to be protected from nasty and deadly infections. Currently, I'm developing a vaccine candidate to help prevent COVID-19.
In an interview in 2020, Catherine confirmed what Conwell was saying, where she fully admitted that Pfizer was flying the plane as they were building it. This is a huge admission as to the nature of the so-called science that was happening behind the scenes.
The most chilling thing for me was when we walked our dog and we go by the hospital complexes and you see one refrigerated truck after the other appearing in the parking lots in front of the hospitals.
The refrigerator truck morgues.
Morgues, right. It was just chilling, absolutely chilling. That was absolutely fueling the desire to come up with the vaccine no matter what it takes.
This was kind of personal.
It became very personal. I saw this as an enemy.
The virus.
The virus. I took this very personally. I wanted to fight it, beat it, fight it down. It was, nothing else mattered.
I also have the transcript of audio that I obtained on October 28th, 2021, from the former head of pediatric formulations, Bakul Bhattacharya, reiterating what Catherine and Conwell were saying, claiming once again that they were building the plane as they were starting to fly it. Conwell then goes on to say that the vaccine was not so effective and says that the mRNA and LNPs are very sneaky.
Only Johnson & Johnson side effect came out quickly, like there was a clot that was happening with Johnson & Johnson's.
Right.
But other than that, mRNA and LNP are very sneaky, I think. We are not still seeing a lot of like huge complications.
She goes on to highlight how the clinical trials completely skipped normal clinical trials and went straight up, all at once, to phase 3.
There are 3 types of trials, right? Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We just went straight up, right?
Yeah.
We just did this, but this is why it takes 10 years for a vaccine to come out.
Yeah.
It takes years of, observation, blah, 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 1, then 2 and 3. Here we are doing everything at the same time. So everybody is as puzzled.
Yeah.
Nobody has 100, even Pfizer CEO and even Ugo Sahin won't have answers. Because they are like looking at it, closely watching it. At this point, that's all we can do. And I feel like, it's also becoming a money game. This is where it started. So problem is distribution of vaccines to those populations, to those countries. By the time it reaches there, this vaccine is now not yet useful.
I'll ask you this one, why are we worried about booster shots over here if we're gonna, shouldn't we be giving them?
Of course, but there is so much of politics, right?
This is Ramin Davari, the pharmaceutical formulation scientist from Pfizer, one of the head honchos of the COVID-19 formulation team. This clip was from October 21st, 2021. Just listen to what he has to say about the safety issues of the vaccine.
My mother called me 2 days ago and said that her therapist's friend told her that her friend took a booster shot and died the same day, I think, in her bathroom. I don't know if it was Pfizer, but
the only booster shot so far has been Pfizer.
So I mean, well, it must have been Pfizer, and I'm just concerned that she was relatively old. She was 77 apparently, but I mean, it's kind of scary to me.
Well, that's the thing. Just people die every day.
I think it's something that we should look into and make sure that the boosters
people are looking into it.
Yeah.
It's just not our job to look into that.
Yeah.
But there are people within Pfizer, all the political people.
Okay.
And the safety people.
Right.
There are people who are not only looking at that, actually there are reports that come to Pfizer, zillions of them every day.
Zillions.
Oh yeah.
Do you think Pfizer gets mad when they don't mandate it?
From a business perspective?
Yeah.
It's just like saying, You think the chips companies, they're going to get mad if somebody says chips is not good for you? Of course.
Probably.
Yeah.
But I mean,
they don't care if people just eat chips all day and die, because their job is
to sell chips.
Engineering it the way that I take. No, it's not even selling it. It's for me to take it, basically, right? Because otherwise I won't buy it.
Right.
Yeah. So you forget about those parts of business, basically. So
yeah,
they're engineering it specifically for me to take the next one.
Right.
So increasing my consumption and increasing my consumption, guess what? It's going to affect my heart, and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I don't eat chips. They're giving out free chips over there, and I don't eat them because I'm like, I don't want that.
Hey, that's
Give me a free salad.
Once you say no to it, it's very easy.
All of these admissions were from higher-ups and people directly involved with the production of the vaccine. While the public was being told that the vaccine was safe and effective, behind the scenes, Pfizer was gaming the FDA and convincing everybody to board a plane that they were building in mid-flight. There were several other stories that I thought were absolutely bombshell that were buried by James and his organizations. Two big ones that I will highlight here are Kim Witzak and Raymond Bechard. Number 1. This is Accidental Advocate, Kim Witzak. She's the co-founder of Woody Matters, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for a stronger FDA and drug safety system, and is on the FDA Advisory Committee for Psychopharmacologic Drugs. OMG had me fly to Minneapolis to meet Kim, and when I sat down to dinner with her, she had me in tears. I will let Kim tell her story herself.
Sure. Well, I call myself the accidental advocate because I never chose to do this work, and sometimes our greatest purposes choose us. And I was married back in 2003 to my best friend, my husband of 10 years. On August 6, 2003, I got a call that forever changed my life.
Woody Witzak had a life to be envied.
He's not giving up easy.
A life of adventure, a loving wife, a job as vice president of sales. On August 6th, he was found hanging from the rafters of his garage, dead at 37.
Woody he's a statistic.
His wife blames these. Woody's doctor gave him Zoloft to help ease stress and sleeplessness.
And Woody wasn't depressed. Woody had no history of depression or any other mental illness. Woody had just started his dream job with a startup company and was having trouble sleeping. And so he did, he just did what he would have done, which is like, hey, doc, I'm not sleeping. And the doctor gave him a 3-week sample pack of an antidepressant, Zoloft. And
5 weeks after Woody started Zoloft, Kim got a phone call.
They're like, Woody's dead. I'm like, and I start screaming. I'm like, what do you mean Woody's dead?
This doesn't make any sense.
Kim and her brother-in-law Eric spend days researching the possible link between antidepressants and suicide. Kim says the pill took her husband away.
Intuitively, in every part of my body, I knew there's no way Woody would take his own life. So really, my brother-in-law Googled that night, Googled Zoloft and suicide, and literally we had no idea that in 1991, the FDA held hearings on the link between violence and suicide and Prozac. And at that time, all of the committee members voted, they said, nope, we don't see any, there's no link. Meanwhile, we now get Zoloft on the market. We have Paxil on the market. It gets approved for kids. And that is really the scenario of what was going on in 2003 when my husband died tragically.
Today, she filed a lawsuit against Pfizer. It claims Pfizer knew Zoloft was unsafe and claims the company had not told Woody's doctor or any doctor about the possibility of suicide.
These documents were all sealed. I mean, they were sealed. Pfizer for many years argued that they were trade secret, But the federal judge in my case looked at it and said, this isn't federal. These aren't trade secrets. You know, the documents that they got out from under seal showed a very, very different story than what we were being told. I didn't realize that even fluoxetine, which is Prozac, in Germany, it initially was never approved for two reasons: lack of efficacy and risk of suicide. That was in the 80s. Pfizer had a Zoloft prosecutor manual that was in their files, that they were helping to create a prosecutor manual. And that was from like 1998. There's a whole history of these medications.
After years of public pressure, in 2004, the Food and Drug Administration finally shattered psychiatry's hype when it ordered its strongest warning, a black box, added to antidepressant packaging, warning parents that the drugs could cause their children to commit suicide.
One of the ones that was actually kept from the public is a side effect called akathisia. Akathisia is like an internal agitation where you just want to like scratch it out of you. You're constantly moving.
Where are you going? Huh? You gonna be okay?
And literally one of the documents that was Pfizer Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Roger Lane, had written an article discussing what akathisia is in a journal that is public. But what wasn't public was the memo that he sent to his sales staff that said the attached journal article may not be suitable for general practitioners. And in that journal article, he said, if a person experiences akathisia, which is that internal like restlessness, quote unquote, his words, death may be a welcome result, because you just want it to end. And so they kept that from GPs. And so this is what I'm saying, like when you saw all this in black and white on their letterhead, this is, and my husband's dead, and you guys knew this? Like, I don't understand.
When I met with Kim in Minneapolis for OMG, she explained to me that she was removed from the FDA Safety Committee vote on the smoking cessation drug Chantix. She was sounding the alarm on the FDA allowing the black box warning to be removed from the drug in 2016. This is the first time that this has happened with any drug ever. Her being removed from the vote was unprecedented for drug safety. This was the video that she showed to the FDA Advisory Committee.
After starting Chantix, I contemplated suicide for the first time in my life.
I woke my boyfriend up in the middle of the night and started physically beating him. It was like I had no control. I eventually had to be sent to a crisis center.
2 weeks later, my dad was dead from a self-inflicted gunshot.
I had a horrible nightmare that I was lying.
I became depressed for no apparent reason. I thought I might go crazy.
After taking Chantix, I became
paranoid. I began to have suicidal thoughts and incredible.
1 more week.
3 weeks after my son started drinking, he began acting
After a week of taking Chantix, I lost my mind.
right up to bed.
He took his mind
looking around looking for
Next up, we have Raymond Bichard.
Human trafficking. You might think it's the type of crime that happens somewhere else, but in fact, it's closer to home than you think. In his book, The Berlin Turnpike, a multitude of dangers facing young people, adults, and families are exposed. Raymond Bichard is an author, speaker, and human rights watchdog and joins me now. Welcome to Connecticut Style. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, and thank you for having the courage to cover this topic.
In 2012, Raymond started the online campaign Force Facebook to Block All Child Pornography, which garnered 1.5 million followers and 400,000 signatures. His efforts paid off, with Facebook finally implementing practices addressing the problem.
Now, for over 20 years, I've investigated human trafficking across the globe. And in that time, we found an enormous amount of child abuse images on Facebook. Now think of it, for the first time in history, pedophiles didn't need to hide what they were doing. Across language barriers, across borders, across the world, these people were gathering on Facebook, validating each other, enabling each other.
Essentially, in a nutshell, Ray uncovered on Twitter exactly what he uncovered on Facebook a decade earlier: an entire network of human trafficking. James sat down with Ray and ended up creating a well-cut and well-edited video detailing exactly what he found, how he found it, and just the kind of filth that was on there.
Data left me tied up in the woods and told strangers where to find me. Camping with my daughter went great. Well, I just hope that whoever finds her takes good care of her from here on out, because she's not my problem anymore. I've had my fun with her, plus my wife just recently gave birth, so I've got a new fresh toy to play with. All these search terms are allowed. Slave master, and you can see what they've done to the word women here. Worthless, object, mutt, error, nothing.
So Twitter is a vehicle for
human trafficking.
Human trafficking. Mm-hmm.
No doubt. Now, these are all live. All of these terms I took from posts on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And you've got nude teen, young porn, and you've got some kind of coded words like petite or teeny, tiny, things like that. But if we click on any of these, let's say teen slut, it just brings us directly to Twitter and all of the posts that have that involved. This girl's been written on, and then of course the services that you can go through. So as I was looking at how human trafficking and child pornography came off of Craigslist, came off of Backpage, where did it go? Even to me, it was too obvious that it might have gone to one of the major social media websites. So as I started looking for where these search terms were allowed, because they're not allowed, even in Google, they're not allowed in any of the meta companies, I looked at Twitter and they just started coming up. And then I started to say, okay, is anyone else doing anybody this? What's their policy? And their policy's pretty open.
Pretty open.
Or they're not following it.
Do you think Elon Musk is aware of this?
I don't know. I don't know how he couldn't be. It's got to be. It's such a. It's so huge on Twitter. It's such a huge part of the Twitter population.
Is Twitter breaking any of their own policies by allowing this to take place?
Yeah, I've looked at their policies. Well, one of the ones is just the non-consensual one. But if you look at their stated policies and then look at their content, they're breaking it all over the place. They're literally ignoring all of their cybersecurity policies. Absolutely ignoring it. Mm-hmm. And this was happening before Elon Musk purchased the company. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the only one to say this. There's law enforcement saying it. There's other journalists saying it.
Unfortunately, you never saw this footage. James responded to us as to why he didn't release the story.
Conducted interview, no smoking gun of any substance. Privacy search function can restrict porn on devices if you set it on. He was showing when it was off. His story was, porn shouldn't be on Twitter.
It was a bullshit response. It was actually a huge story. There was a network of filth operating openly on Twitter, breaking their own terms of service, and happening despite who owned the company. So according to James, it was a bombshell story that Jordan Tristan Walker admitted, with no evidence whatsoever, that Pfizer was mutating COVID. And yet, here was an entire network of what anyone with two eyes can see is child endangerment and trafficking, and his response was, no smoking gun. You gotta be kidding me.
Ultimately, I come from Pfizer, and then I come from alternative media, and not all alternative media is bad, but where, the mainstream alternative media with James ultimately comes across as, truth, and then they just sprinkle in a ton of lies.
It's controlled opposition, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They were there just to bait everybody that's a whistleblower, and then able to control anything that was coming from the whistleblower. That was their job, and that's still their job. They don't care who they hurt along the way.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI?
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
With all my experience in working at both PV and OMG, I knew that James always had the final say on what stories would be released. And looking back, I realized that every story that PV and OMG released were all low-baller stories. Low-hanging fruit, if you will. Jordan Walker was just a director-level employee working at Pfizer. He wasn't the CEO. He wasn't an executive like James would claim. Do you know who was an executive? Nick Warren. David Casamento was just some school superintendent. His stature pales in comparison to the stuff we were revealing in the Microscope Expose. While PV buried the story on Nick Warren gaming the FDA, they highlighted Jordan Walker and mutating viruses that don't exist. A big fat cow of a story that James continues to milk today.
We go to this restaurant, and again, very quick story, and then I'll make a major announcement. We go to this restaurant in Brooklyn, New York, in the Dumbo section of Brooklyn, and I walk in to say hello to this guy. Hey there. Is this seat taken? What? Hi. You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
Is this real life? This is absurd.
Why does Pfizer want to hide from the public that they're mutating the COVID virus?
Oh my God.
You're on video. You're on video.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about
mutating the COVID virus.
What is going on here?
As far as I could tell, this was the role that James O'Keefe was playing. It was all theater. He was filtering out the gold while peddling lumps of coal. The reality is that the undercover information I obtained in December of 2021, while the boosters and mandates were in full swing, would have blown the whole vaccine agenda wide open. The bombshell material I got was utterly diffused by the celebrated and lauded king of investigative journalism himself. What is my experience with James O'Keefe? He is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I became absolutely convinced that James O'Keefe was part of some sort of version of Operation Mockingbird.
And welcome to our video on Operation Mockingbird, the top-secret CIA program that ran from the 1950s to the 1970s. The goal of the program was to infiltrate and influence media outlets in order to shape public opinion and spread propaganda. The CIA used a variety of tactics to achieve this goal, including bribing journalists and editors, creating fake news stories, and even establishing entire media organizations as fronts for the agency. One of the most well-known examples of Operation Mockingbird was the CIA's involvement in the creation of the New York Times Foreign News Service. In the 1950s, the CIA recruited foreign journalists and used them to spread propaganda and disseminate information that was favorable to the agency. The CIA also had ties to various other media outlets, including CBS, NBC, and Time magazine. These media organizations were used as a platform for the CIA to spread propaganda and manipulate public opinion. In many cases, the CIA even had direct control over the content that was published in these outlets. It's important to remember the history of Operation Mockingbird and to be aware of the ways in which the media can be used to shape public opinion and spread propaganda.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first. Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Despite its end, the legacy of Operation Mockingbird lives on, and many people believe that the CIA and other government agencies still have a significant influence on the media and use propaganda and disinformation to shape public opinion.
If Operation Mockingbird is still in effect, and if there are journalists working within our media today that are there to distract and deceive us, then James O'Keefe fits the mold beautifully.
In 1977, Carl Bernstein wrote an article in Rolling Stone. It was titled "The CIA and the Media." Bernstein claimed that the CIA secretly bankrolled foreign press services. They were both in English and foreign languages. They provided excellent cover for CIA operatives. These reports led to a series of congressional investigations. They were conducted in the 1970s under the Church Committee.
You know, Carl Bernstein wrote an article about Mockingbird around 1975 or 76 in Rolling Stone. And at that point, I think there were some 400 editors, journalists, from all the largest publications. The New York Times had been compromised. The high-level people at those journals were working for the agency or had signed secrecy agreements with those agencies, with the CIA, and at CBS, ABC, NBC, high-level journalists. So today, today that's going on. After 75, when it all came out, during the Church Committee hearings, the CIA promised that it would no longer compromise American journalists. It continued the program to compromise journalists all over the world, and today the CIA is the biggest funder of journalism in the world.
On April 20th, 2022, at Dartmouth College, James O'Keefe gave a presentation entitled, "What is Truth?" During the Q&A, James was directly asked if he thought that there was some version of Operation Mockingbird still going on today.
My question was, do you believe there's some version of Operation Mockingbird still going on today with regards to the Russian-Ukrainian war? And there's been some, RT's been taken down from YouTube. And do you have any opinion on that?
No. See, this is what I don't do. Unlike the guy at the I don't opine on things I know nothing about. I like to keep it to the facts. It's pretty straightforward. And that's why I made that article the basis of my presentation, because it is the problem we have in society.
James claimed to know nothing about Operation Mockingbird and refused to even speak one word about 9/11. One of my associates who I worked with for years, Alicia Nightingale Gamble, just so happens to be the wife of Brian Gamble. Brian, according to his own words, is a U.S. Navy veteran and pioneer of digital warfare doctrine. Brian used to work as a CIO at Veolia Water Technologies, which has direct ties to the World Economic Forum. Brian was also the CIO of the America Project an organization founded by General Mike Flynn and Patrick Byrne. General Flynn is a lieutenant general and was national security advisor to Trump during his 2016 presidential campaign. Patrick Byrne was the owner of Overstock.com and before 2020 was one of Utah's largest donors to both the Republican and Democratic parties. The America Project's mission is to empower the American people to preserve our constitutional republic and defeat tyranny. After working here, Brian then became the CIO of the O'Keefe Media Group from March 2023 to August of that year. Alicia and Brian Gamble both helped push the QAnon narrative heavily during the elections. Nightingale went under the name Redshift Reality and was openly promoting QAnon gatherings and the movement.
Okay, everybody, say hello to Alicia Gamble. We've got her on today. She's coming out of Florida. Alicia, how's it going? And can you introduce a bit of about yourself to my audience?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Alicia. I like to organize our Great Awakening Q rallies. I organize the event in DC, and then we have an upcoming event in Tampa I wanted to talk about.
It's Magic Cue Ball.
Even going as far as selling magic cue balls.
I to kind of offset our losses, I came up with a novelty gift to sell at our shows called the Cue Ball, the Magic Cue Ball.
Brian Gamble was also the creator of the Red Pill Roadshow, with Nightingale speaking at these events.
And my special guest today is Brian Gamble, the founder of Red Pill Roadshow. Brian,
what's up, man?
Thank you very much, brother, for your time.
That's what we are, a free speech event. And despite what the media says, you know, I think by now people probably think I am Q. Who knows? But despite what the media says, it's all we are. That's all we ever have been, is a free speech event and a free speech platform for those that have been silenced by the deep state and big tech.
Nice.
During the so-called riots at the Capitol on January 6th, Brian Gamble happened to be suited up in riot gear, standing near a man who was clearly instigating the crowd.
They voted, and what have they done? They stole it. We want our fucking country back. And thank you. Let's go!
At the first breach of the barriers at the White House, who was there but Brian Gamble himself?
Directly into the police line.
They weren't very prepared.
No.
I mean, not that I was like coming to rush the building, but just having a little bit of security knowledge, they weren't very prepared, were they? We were like, man, that looks a weak spot right there. And then we would say it to ourselves, and then it wasn't 2 minutes later that they're...
What's up, everybody? Brian here. Quick video to drop. Lynn Wood apparently dropped a post about me in Telegram. My phone sounds like a pinball machine. Everybody's letting me know this. Thank you for that. And Lynn Wood, interestingly enough, is asking about me being at the Capitol on January 6th. He has my phone number. So why he didn't just pick up the phone and ask me personally about what I was doing there at the Capitol on January 6th, I find that interesting.
Why was Brian at the Capitol? And why is he dressed in SWAT gear? This is undercover footage of Nightingale going on several meetings with New York Times national security reporter Matthew Rosenberg. In this footage, you'll see that they talk about how January 6th was not that scary, and Rosenberg claims that there were FBI informants in the crowd.
Project Veritas went out and honey-trapped the guy, apparently. Videotaped Matthew Rosenberg talking in private. Now, we have mixed feelings about those kind of tactics, but it's kind of fascinating what Matthew Rosenberg says when he doesn't think people are listening.
Like, I think you could tell how much fun we had on January.
Oh, that's great. Are you allowed to have that much fun on January 6th? Aren't you supposed to be mourning?
I know. So if you're traumatized. But like, all these colleagues who are in the building, little younger, who's like, oh my God, it's so scary. I'm like, oh, we're the ones, not Fox, not Breitbart, who actually went and uncovered the fact that, like, there were a ton of FBI informants on the people who attacked the Capitol.
Oh, they uncovered that there were, quote, a ton of FBI informants in the crowd on January 6th? I don't remember reading that in the New York Times.
So while Brian Gamble was at the first breach point at the Capitol riots on January 6th, his wife was undercover getting footage claiming that there were FBI informants in the crowd. Once again, you've got to be kidding me. Both Brian and General Flynn have said they did not believe in the QAnon conspiracy, and yet Flynn's family once put out a video announcing the famous Q slogan,
"Where we go one, we go all.
Where we go one, we go all.
God bless America.
God bless America."
and Brian is hosting events promoting it. How did Brian end up working with Flynn and James O'Keefe? Let's just say that Brian rubs elbows with some high-level people in the military, government, and media.
And I've always had a problem with shutting up. It's always been my Achilles heel in life. I can't just shut my mouth.
The CIA claimed that they ended Operation Mockingbird. But did they really?
The military has a name for fake news. It's called IIA Operations, Interactive Internet Activities. The military uses Interactive Internet Activities, or IIA, as the psychological operations nomenclature for a tactical social media warfare program. Department of Defense Information Operations Joint Publications 3-12.2 Psychological Operations dated the 7th of January 2010. It defines interactive internet activities as follows. A. Psychological operations and computer network operations. CNO supports PSYOP with dissemination assets to include interactive internet activities. CNO activities can deny or degrade an adversary's ability to access, report, and process information. This capability supports PSYOP by providing access to digital media within the information environment to reach intended targets. When you watch any social media influencer of any status, always in your mind must be the concept of IIA operations. Limited release or limited hangout, controlled release, suppression, containment, redirection, misdirection of information into meaningless manufactured online issues, arguments and circular dead ends that exhaust and confuse. The aim? To never allow diverse, meaningful information to become direct, meaningful political power and movements at the grassroots level that have concrete effects in the public domain.
The CIA promised that it would no longer compromise American journalists. It continued the program to compromise journalists all over the world, and today the CIA is the biggest funder of journalism in the world.
The only thing I knew anymore is that I didn't know. I didn't know who to trust anymore, and that was the most heartbreaking thing of all. There is the potential that literally everyone that I worked with was some sort of political operative, knowingly or unknowingly. The hardest part for me was that I was surrounded by colleagues, confidants, people that I hung out with, had drinks with, had laughs with, and now everyone surrounding me in my life became suspect. Who is compromised? Who is working for who? Who is being played and used? Who is a useful idiot, just like I was, and who is an agent working undercover for some darker agenda? Let's just say, as the smoke cleared from the lies of virology, a dark cloud over my innocence grew.
What is the Bohemian Grove? Well, it's a kind of summer camp for the powerful, an all-male gathering in great secrecy. More from Dennis Murphy.
George Shultz, Henry Kissinger, and West German Chancellor Schmidt arrived by car. The chairman of General Motors and U.S. Steel came in by private jet.
If you would look at the guest list over a period of 5 years, I don't think there would be anybody of any importance in America who was missing from that list.
Cabinet officers and captains of industry are going to summer camp at Bohemian Grove, an all-male retreat secluded in the Redwood Forest 2 hours north of San Francisco. Outsiders are not invited. What's hidden away is a little bit of Boy Scout camp and a lot of fraternity hokum. There are rituals, bonfires, and the burning of effigies. The members live in lodges with names like Wolf and Caveman. Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, William French Smith, and George Shultz are bunkmates at Mandalay Camp. A campground statue reminds Bohemians to keep their mouths shut about the Grove.
The Bohemian Grove that I attend, from time to time, the Easterners and the others that come there, but it is the most faggy goddamn thing you will ever imagine. A San Francisco crowd that goes in there. It's just terrible.
The Bohemian Grove is a heavily restricted 2,700-acre campground in Northern California, where in mid-July of each year, a 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world meet.
Have you been there for the ceremony with the cremation of care?
Frankly, I don't think that's something I need to talk to you about.
Well, I'm Alex Jones, and I snuck in there in 2000. I'm the guy that blew it wide open and got the video. It's been on national TV.
Well, I disrespect you for that.
You do?
I do.
Thus buried across the shadowy tide, in all the ancient majesty of death, no arch enemy of beauty. Not for thee that has been tribute, or the restful grave, fire shall have its will of thee, and all the winds make merry with thy dust. Begone, dull care! Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care, and all the winds make merry with thy dust. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free.
In June and July, insider agents Clarice Schillinger, Shane Smith, and Julie Trammell had left OMG as they were all having issues with James. Before she left, Julie Trammell had brought up to me that she had found evidence that James was being invited to the Bohemian Grove. James told the team that he was,
"Guys, I will be unavailable, unable to even look at my phone from July 20th to the 27th. While I am gone, I expect this team post every day on my Twitter account, have videos ready to go each and every day while I'm gone. We cannot just go 10 days dead silent."
The very time James was going off grid was the exact week of the encampment at the Grove. Knowing that James was alleged to be headed to California for the secret gathering at the Grove, prior to his trip, I set out to corroborate my story completely as best as I could. On August 1st, I obtained a photo of James O'Keefe's tent slip next to his book, American Muckraker, when I was at his house in Northvale, New Jersey. Carrot Top hooked me up by throwing the tent slip directly in my direction while I was working, and I proceeded to take a picture of it when I went to go to the bathroom. Finally, on August 23rd, James O'Keefe came clean to me and called me saying,
I went to this Bohemian club and it's upset people. So I just wanted to hear from you and kind of take your temperature and see how you're feeling, see how you're doing, like what's going through your mind.
James, how did you even get invited there? And it's the most powerful secret society in the world.
I feel like my own team is like eliciting me and challenging me and questioning me. And I think I was just a guest. I didn't see anything wrong there. Some of our people that I've known for many years were there. If I saw something, I would tell you, but I think there's a lot of conspiracy theories and stuff, and I didn't see anything that crossed the line or anything like that. Some strange things, but nothing like what's portrayed by like Alex Jones or anyone else, as far as I can see. And there's a lot of people that support us that are involved in that. Some people on this team are really challenging me in a fundamental way, and it's really more than I can take right now. So I just need to know, like, are you with me? Are you, and just tell me the truth. Like,
Truthfully, James, I can't say yes to that because of everything that we've been through from Pfizer Whistleblower to now.
I can't feel like my own team is like investigating me. You have to trust me. It sounds like you're not.
I called James back that day and I wanted to bring up to him more about Pfizer and my story being buried and how this was truly a crime against humanity.
You want to continue our conversation?
Sure thing. James, you advised it, and it wasn't even my decision to go about it this way. It was a manipulative tactic.
I thought about the tape again after the February. I thought about revisiting it, but a lot of people said it's a few years old. It's a little old. It's probably not advisable to do it. Our attorney advised us not to look at that footage. And I think it's important that we listen to our attorneys who are trying to help us and keep us out of trouble. There are certain lines that we just can't cross. Certain lines that I can't cross. I wouldn't advise that you cross.
I mean, it's been a lot, and I was like the golden ticket, Willy Wonka of whistleblowers. Literally, codenamed Microscope. I literally showed people, like, the nanotechnology in this shot, James, like the bioweapon behind it. Why don't we do an interview together on how fucked up the whole thing was?
Because you just said that I'm trying to extort you, and you've crossed, you can't, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I've been through a lot in the sense that, I come from being the Pfizer whistleblower, right? I wanted to blow the whistle on this bioweapon, and you shut me up.
Right.
You shut me up.
Who shut you up?
You did.
Who shut you up?
I was silenced by you, sir. Regarding Pfizer, how I was a source, remember? How I came to you, wanted to blow the whistle on the whole thing.
What would cause all of the people, all of your former colleagues, to caution you to release that? Why would they caution you to release that?
Probably because they don't want the truth to get out, because of all the powerful information behind it all. It's way too powerful, such as the Vice President Nick Warren saying he gamed the system, gain the FDA. Tell me that's not public information. Millions of people died, James, from this shot. The moral, ethical thing to do is bypass these things on paper, written laws, that don't actually matter. God's law is what matters, sir. On July 13th, James and I went for a walk in the woods near his house in Northvale, New Jersey.
You went through what you went through, you got that information, and even if it isn't released, like the video of what you did, like you can even write about it, although that might be an issue.
What, the microscope stuff?
And I was just talking for a minute about things like you. I remember when I met you in that restaurant, and I remember like talking to you. I remember thinking, this guy probably thinks I'm a dick.
Gathering and disclosing matters of important information some person or group wants to keep secret. Things that are hidden from public view. And the New York Times said 125 years ago that journalists must operate without being afraid and without being partial. To operate without fear or favor. Have you ever heard? It's on the top of the New York Times masthead. That was in 1896, Professor. Recently, the New York Times editor said, a journalist has to have it in his heart to make society better. Also, to tell the truth, shame the devil. Journalism was defined by one guy, Walter Lippmann, one of the deans of journalism. He said a job of a journalist is to tell the truth and shame the devil. I mean, even he brought spirituality into this battle. This is a fight of good versus evil, as much as it is about truth versus fiction, left versus right. It's good versus bad. So in that ways, yeah, it can be a spiritual war what you're fighting.
I just want to leave one last message to the audience. Truth is love, and love is truth. Thank you for watching my story. Please share it with the world. I do not mean any malice or harm to anybody that is portrayed in this film, such as my old colleagues, Conwall Gill, Ramin Davari, Nick Warren, or my other team members at Pfizer. As a team member of the Pharmaceutical Research and Development Analytical team, I knew that there was clearly something wrong with the vaccine rollout. And I feel that I have blood on my hands from working on this vaccine. In spiritual law, the law is to do no harm. I simply was doing what I was doing because God placed me in a position to help people wake up to the dangers of the COVID-19 vaccine. To the vaccine injured and to those who have lost loved ones to these horrible bioweapons, I am beyond sorry that I faced this mountain of a challenge and that this story is only coming to fruition now. I am a Pfizer whistleblower who was silenced and in the process have uncovered virology to be entirely fraudulent, if not just based on Christine Massey's FOI requests alone. From my own experience as both a highly skilled and meticulous scientist and journalist, I can come to no other conclusion other than that the entirety of virology is a pseudoscience. As a Pfizer whistleblower, I assert the improvability of viruses as one of my foundational arguments. This means that not only is this COVID-19 injection neither safe nor effective, but that all vaccines and mostly all of allopathic medicine as a whole is one giant fraud. I do not mean any malice or harm to anybody that I worked with to corroborate my story while working at Project Veritas or O'Keefe Media Group. I did what I did because there was a grave injustice done to me, and as this injustice was done to me, ultimately, it was done to the world. The story that I had obtained back in 2021 when boosters and mandates and childhood vaccine approvals were running rampant, this story could have helped increase vaccine hesitancy on a massive scale. As a whistleblower, PV's fraudulent behavior of burying information that was rightfully public knowledge is wrong, plain and simple. What I have done is protected in spiritual law. God is watching me, and he knows that this has been a weight of the world, a psychological terror that I can no longer bear, and I have to share this with the world. In writing, God's law is protected by the Whistleblower Protection Act, False Claims Act, Title 31, USC 3729, where my testimony will be used in support of an investigation to the vaccine safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines, as well as Article 4, the Supreme Law, Clause 2, Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. Regardless of the existence of these protections, we as men and women have a responsibility to do what is right, regardless of the outcome. As James O'Keefe said himself, this is a fight of good versus evil as much as it is about truth versus fiction. It's good versus bad. And as Littman said, the role of a journalist is to shame the devil himself. Well, this is me shaming the devil. This is not about right versus left. This is not divide and conquer. This is about right versus wrong. And I choose God. I choose good. I choose Team Humanity. Raymond Burchard once told me, when you pass on a story like this, you become the story itself. Thank you for watching my story, and may God bless each and every one of you. Justin Leslie, signing off.
You're throwing everything you have at me. Cheap shots, low blows, will you ever let it go? You're so pathetic, give it a rest. You're not gonna win, you're never gonna. Oh, you love the sound of your own voice and the crown of death upon your head. Oh, come on, you and all your royalty on the edge of infamy. You're going to taste my fist. You're so good at stretching the truth into a sugar-coated lie. Everyone takes a bite. I have been dining with the enemy. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now it's so clear to me. Oh, I've had enough of your games. If you're not trembling, you better be. 'Cause we're gonna be the end of you. I've had enough of your games. I'm gonna show them who you are. I can tell you right now, it won't be pretty. I can convince anyone anything, provoking the anger of a jealous God. Still you spin a web of lies, fear, lust, pride, greed, and shame. You said no one, oh you said no one escapes the pain. I've had enough of your games. If you're not trembling, you better be. 'Cause we're gonna be the end of you. I've had enough of your games. I'm gonna show them who you are. I can tell you right now, it won't be pretty.
I went to this Bohemian Club and it's upset people. So I just wanted to hear from you and kind of take your temperature and see how you're feeling, see how you're doing.
In the skies for so long now, you held me everything you have of me. Cheap shots, low blows, will you ever let it go? You're so pathetic, give it a rest. You're not gonna win, you're never gonna.
What is he doing? He's shaking his head and file a complaint. Where's he going?
He's going to jail.